Okay, so in the past video, we have talked about how to use JavaScript to validate our forms. And the next goal is to send this information to the backend, to the server, so that we can do the registration or do the login operation. So how can we do that? And so before talking about writing a program for the server, we need to talk about database because we need to store this user information and later on probably article information in a database. So we're going to write some MySQL. We're going to use MySQL as the database to store our data, both the user information and article information in this MySQL database. So let's start from installing MySQL on Ubuntu 2004. I find the tutorial on DigitalOcean are very useful. So let's go through this process together. I don't want to hide how to install this process from you. So if I show you how to install it, probably you can run the same operation, same commands. Say, okay, the first one is let's do sudo apt update, and to type in my password. And in Ubuntu, this just fetches the most recent version of your packages that is currently installed. It's going to take some time to fetch the updates. Okay, 17.4 megabytes in 26 seconds. So this is my fresh Ubuntu 2004 installation. So I guess there will be a lot of things to upgrade. So there are 123 packages to upgrade. So we're not really going to upgrade them. We're going to only install MySQL. So that's install sudo apt install MySQL server. So you can install MySQL on Mac, on Windows, on any operating systems. But Ubuntu is probably the most widely used server version. So we're going to install it here. So it takes some time to install the MySQL server. Okay, it seems it's completed. Okay, so the next step is configure MySQL. So it's not fully installed at this moment. So we're going to run sudo MySQL secure installation. So once you start to use things like a server or a database, you really need to care about security issues, because if you have a problem with security, the data, the user privacy, user password maybe got leaked to the hackers. So that's first MySQL secure installation. That's set root. I'm currently setting it to root underscore password. So I'm going to use this password later. Okay. I will just use this system for this tutorial purpose, and I will remove this virtual machine right after I'm done with recording the tutorial. So it's okay to tell you uh, the password. Okay, it can't connect to MySQL. So wait, what's the root password here? I think I'm simply setting a root user password, but it seems it's not. So this will take you through a promote to make some changes. You want to run the include security script that create some of the less secure default options, things like a remote root login and sample users. So I didn't set my root username, right? What's my root username? Okay, it seems I have a problem with this username. So the root password, I didn't set it. This will install MySQL, but will not promote you set a password or make any other configuration because this leaves installation insecure. We'll address the next. So let's do one thing. I can try MySQL-u root. Let's see what's going on. Cannot connect. Okay, is MySQL running? I can run sudo service MySQL status. Check MySQL is stopped. So MySQL is not running. We probably need to go through this MySQL install sudo MySQL installation. Let's try run it again without any password. Cannot connect. Let's try install it again. Install sudo apt install MySQL server. It's already installed. Okay, so I kind of don't know what's going on. Connecting. Let's search for this. Let's try to start a service and see if it works. Sudo service MySQL start. Okay, then we can check the status. Then it seems it's running. So let's run this. Let's try to connect to MySQL. Yeah, access denied. This is at least better saying it's not working. So let's try to run this MySQL secure installation. Okay, finally works. So the first thing, it asks a valid password component can be used to test password and improve security. It checks the strength of password and allow the users to set only the password which is secure enough. So we use no for here. New password. I'm going to use root underscore password for now. Root password. Remove anonymous users. Yes, we're not going to allow anonymous users. Disallow root remote login. Let's keep it for now. In a real system, you definitely want to disable that so that you have to physically present to the system so that you can you can run as the root user. Root user has all the privilege, and they can the root user can remove all the databases and can grant privilege to all other users. So it's kind of very dangerous. So if you disallow root login remotely, so you have to be physically present to that user, to that machine, so that you can use you can run MySQL as the root user. So we're not going to disallow it for now, but in your real system, it's probably want to disallow it. Remove test database and access to it. Let's remove it. Okay. Reload the previous table will ensure all changes. Reload, yes, let's reload it, all done. Okay, so let's try MySQL. Let's try MySQL and with user root with -p. So I'm not typing anything. Okay, then will ask me to enter password. I'm typing root underscore password is access denied. I don't know why it's access denied for root. I think I set the username, but I cannot log in with it. So okay, yeah, I had this problem before. You have to probably have to use sudo to run as a root user. So root underscore password. Okay, yeah, we can finally log in. Okay, let's come back here. So it's generally not a good practice to use the root user directly. So what we want to do is here, let's see, creating a dedicated MySQL user and granting privileges. So I'm logging into MySQL. Now you can see MySQL, in everything in MySQL, you start to type this type of command and do particular things, okay? So I'm going to create user called, I'm going to use the semicolon to terminate it. I want to create a user called Yifan, then add, I think this add can be changed, right? At localhost, I don't want it to be localhost. I don't want it. Create a user at, you can specify, if you only plan to access this user locally from your Ubuntu server, you can specify localhost. Wrapping both username and host in a single code isn't always necessary, but doing so can help you prevent errors. Then can we select if we allow remote login? MySQL server create user remote access. Let's see how can we enable remote access. So say, okay, we want to create two users. One is this user at localhost. This is for local access, and my user %. This is for remote access, right? So we're probably not going to access locally. So let's only do remote access. So if you run the server and you want to connect the server, that is considered as remote access. Okay, then identified by, let's give it a password, Yifan password. Okay. Now we execute it. It seems there's an error. You have an error in SQL syntax check manual. Okay. Create username at % identify. Okay, identify. Create user at % identified by password. Yeah, it's probably not really some problem with the command I'm typing, so I'm typing it again. At percent identified by Yifan password. Okay, query okay, 0 rows affected. Probably that line already works. Now I'm just executing it again. But anyway, let's grant all on star point star. So this is a little bit dangerous. I'm allowing this particular Yifan user to access all databases and everything. So probably you want to do is to say you want to take care of say if you want this user to be read-only or which database you allow this user to access. But since we do not have a database at this moment, let's just grant all privileges. Okay, to even add percent, then flush privileges. Okay. Then, so I think at this moment we can use Control D to get out of MySQL command line interface, and we can use MySQL again with user as Yifan and the password to log in. The password is Yifan_password. Am I doing right? Yes, it works. So I do not need to sudo to use the root user. That's good. Then the next thing we need to do is we're going to create a database, right? So how to create a database? You can definitely use we're going to just make it simple to type some command here to create a database, but probably you don't want to use some you want to use some external tools to create a database. So have two tools to recommend. One is called MySQL Workbench. This is probably the most widely used tool that works with MySQL. It's dedicated to MySQL. And the other tool is called DataGrip. DataGrip is the same company from that created IntelliJ, and you can download it. If you are a student or an educational user, you can download it for free and you can use it. So it works with many different type of databases. Of course, it works with MySQL database. Okay, so this is DataGrip. So we're not going to use it, and we're just going to type command here. It's a little bit annoying, and you need to be very careful about a lot of things. But I want to show you the basic things. Okay, those tools will pretty much just help you to generate those commands. So, okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to say we're going to create a database for MySQL. MySQL database. Sorry, MySQL create database. Let's see, how can we create a database? So I find that the official documentation for MySQL is something quite annoying because it's probably too professional. It's talking about a lot of things like security issue. So it's probably not that directly useful. But for this simple command, that's good enough. So let's create a database. Let's create a database called Open Publication System, OPS. So a typical convention of writing MySQL queries is in this way. You this keyword, MySQL keyword, you want to create this keyword in capital, all capital letters, and you want to keep your name, your variable or database name or column names, those names in lowercase number, no, lowercase letters. Okay, so here let's start with. Right now, we do not have a database selected, so we want to operate on a particular database from this point on. So we need to use this use command, use OPS, and we have changed the databases. So we can show We can actually show databases. Does that work? Yeah, we can show there are several databases. You can see this information schema, MySQL, OPS, performance schema, and SYS. Those four are default tables, and we created this database table. And we can also show tables. Now, because it's empty set, we have not created any table yet. So it's empty. So we need to start to create tables. Create table SQL. So W336 schools also have this type of information. We're going to use it. It's much simpler. Okay, let's say we are creating user, right? We're creating user. What type of information we have for user? Right now, we probably only have two fields. One is the username, is actually the email, and one is the password, right? So what we're going to do here is that we're going to create a table. So for when creating a table, we probably really want some MySQL specific information. MySQL create table. Create table if not exist. Let's do not consider it if not exist. We create table. MySQL create tables. Let's see official MySQL documentation. You can see there are a lot of information here. It's probably overcomplicated. Yeah, so it's hard to know which one we want to look at. Let's see this PHP MySQL create database, this tutorial. Okay, yep. So the thing here, you need to know that whenever you create a database, or you need to create a table, you are going to have entries in your table, right? For this user table, you are going to have this user. You're going to have the users, like one row is one user, right? For one column is one property. So for example, here we have user, then we have email and the password. But here, what we need to know is that we need to have an identifier for each row, and this identifier is also called primary key. So which identifier we can use to specify a user? So you may think, okay, email is the identifier there, right? The email is unique across all the users, but it's not safe. What if user changed the email, right? If the user changed the email, then later on we may have a lot of problem, because later on we have an article. For every article, we may have one user, and this user is pointing to the user table. And if user change the email and we're using the email to as the primary key, we'll have a lot of problem. We also need to update the article table. If we have other tables, we also need to update all those tables. It's very annoying. So what we can do is that we need to create an ID field. Ideally, it has no physical meaning. And I might personally just simply encourage you to create an ID that for a simple ID that is starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, then an auto increment to for every user that is in this table. And this ID is unique, and it's also has no real world meaning, so that probably you will never want to change it. Okay. So this user, then we can create user. We can create this table called create table user. Now we need to provide information. Can I change a line? I think I can change a line. Yes. Then the first line is ID, and ID, and we need to specify the type, right? The type of this ID. I think int6 is not good enough. I don't know why they select int6. So let's say MySQL database. We need to specify the type, primary key auto increment. Auto increment field. So they simply use ID. They simply use int. But let's see MySQL types. What are the types that we can have? MySQL types. Numeric data types. And we have integer, we have, okay, we have fixed, double precision. I think we're going to use integer. I don't know if there's any recommendation or not. Let's see, auto. I think probably we can use this example. I think this example is from the MySQL MySQL website. So let's use this example. So we want the type to be an integer, and it cannot be null, right? Every user has to have an ID so that we can use it. Now we want it to be auto increment, and we also want to specify this is the primary key. Okay, this is one field, and we need another field. Okay, the other field is email, and for email we need to use another type. And here we want to make it email a string, and here you have two ways to use strings. One is called varchar, one is called text. And text can basically store unlimited amount of text, but the performance is generally considered slower. So you want to have this field. You want to use this varchar field. You need to specify, say, how many characters is generally enough to hold this email. So I think 100 is enough. So let's use varchar 100. Okay, the email can be as no longer than 100 characters, and password. And we can also use this varchar as the type. And let's say I think 32 is probably good enough for data for the password field. Now we can start to we can just simply create this table. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. They have something called a register date. If you want, you can have this field. It's a typical good behavior or good practice to always keep some timestamps. When you created this a particular entry, and when this particular entry is last updated. But let's keep it simple. Let's have this reg date, and let's close it. Okay, let's close this command. Okay, so we created a table. There's zero affected because we're creating table. Then let's try show tables. And we can see, okay, we have a user table. That's perfect, right? Can we describe it? User, describe this table. Yep, you can see, okay, we have three fields. One is ID, is cannot be null, is primary key. Default is null, but is auto increment. We have email and password. They can be null. We actually should set it now. We should not allow any user without email, without password, but that's fine. We can also modify it actually. Then default is still null. Okay, so right now we have a table. Now we want to add some test data. We want to insert some data to this table. How can we insert things? So next thing is something here, MySQL insert data. So basically you need to perform four operations. The first thing is insert. Then you want to select is query. You want to search, say, I have an email. I want to search if there's a certain username with certain user with a certain email. And so whenever that user logs in, I can try to find this particular user. Select, then what else? update. So if a user say they want to change password or email, you should allow them to do that. Update and finally delete. If a user wants to get get removed from this database, you should be able to support it. And one thing to be careful is that sometimes you don't want to really delete things. Your hard drive, hard drive in the server is very cheap. You don't really care about data storage. Whenever you have some legal situation, you want to keep some track, you want to keep some record. So probably a more practical way is rather than using delete, but having another field saying if this user is deleted or not. Then if it's deleted, using update to update that field to delete it, then you will simply use your code to say I will never show the anything related to that user. That is equivalent to delete if a user is using your website. But when you delete things, those records will really get removed. So this is just something. Some useful skills. Okay, so we want to insert things. How we can insert things is we use this keyword called insert into user. This is the table name, and the column name we want to have an email and the password. I think we do not need to specify ID because ID will automatically get created with values. Values is, let's say, sdf at aol.com, one field, and the other field, the password is 123456. Okay, a really bad password. Now, yeah, I forgot a semicolon. Okay, then probably okay, one row affected. Okay, now we actually inserted one row. So then the next thing is how we can show what's in the database. We can use this command: select star. This star represents all the rows that we care about, all the rows. Sometimes you just simply do not want to use star. You want to specify the rows that you are you want to check. But I'm here just want to check if I have successfully inserted that user or not. So I'm going to use select. If you don't want to use select, you can specify I want to check email or password. Okay, you can use in this way. But select, let's use select. Select star from which table is the table name is user. Then select star from user, we can see, okay, there's a one row, right? The ID is one, the email is sdf at aol.com, and the password is 123456. By the way, it's a very bad practice to store password as plain text here. Okay, if a hacker can get into the system, they can get all the password from all the users. It's a very bad idea. I will talk about how to avoid this later, but this test, this is just test case. Okay, so select start from user. This is select command, and this is the second thing we want to show, right? Select command, and let's say if we want to select a user, right, or want to find a user, say when user log in, they need to provide a username and a password. We want to select the user with that particular username, and we want to check if the password is correct or not. So what we can do is using a where clause. So let's do select start from user and add this where clause. Let's see, can we find a MySQL where? Okay, we can find this example. Find an example. Here, where email equals to, say, sdf at aol.com. Forget the semicolon, then execute it. We'll get the exact same output from the previous one because there's only one row in this table right now. But in this way, you can select a particular user. Let's say if we want to change something to some other username. If the user typed the wrong email, then we select it, then we'll get the empty site. Then you can simply return and say, okay, this user does not exist. Select star from user where email equals something. You can change the thing to something else, like a greater than sign or smaller than sign if it's an integer or something. There are many different ways that we can uh, make this selection more useful. MySQL is a very complex uh, language and is basically considered a necessary skill for data scientists. Uh, but here we're only going to introduce these very simple things. Okay, so we have talked about select, then we're going to update. We're going to update, say, can we update data, MySQL update data. So for example, if I want to change the password, how we can do it? You say, okay, update. The table is user. Then want to set, say password equals to 2356567. Okay, I want to change this password to this. And we have to specify which user we want to change this password. We don't want to change all the users' password to this thing. So what we can do is to use where to specify which user it is. And we can specify, say, where email equals to sdf@aol.com. Semicolon, that's executed. It calls okay, one row affected, then row matched one, change the one warning. There's no warning, it works perfectly fine. Then let's select all the users and then see, okay, the password is changed. So this is the way how we can update the field. And finally, we want to check how we can delete data. Is it here? Yeah, MySQL delete data. Now we can run delete from user where email equals to sdf@aol.com. Semicolon and excluded, say, okay, one row affected. Let's run select start from user. We see it's an empty set. There's no user. We have deleted that user. So I think there's no way to recover from this delete action. So you should be very careful about using this delete operation. Okay, that's a basic introduction and for MySQL database and some basic syntax for SQL databases. So different databases, there are many different SQL databases. And you may have Microsoft SQL Server, the Oracle server, and there are many SQL servers. They have a different they slightly differs from each other, and they have dialects. And but for most of things like select, insert, delete, update, they are pretty much the same. Okay, so you probably just whenever you use a database, you just need to check the particular syntax for that particular database, but you can pretty much be certain that they have this insert, select, update, and delete operations, and where clause, these type of things are available for almost all SQL databases. The only new thing that is different is something called NoSQL database. NoSQL database, and it's not typically considered as a relation database. For example, the most popular one is called MongoDB. So it's basically another type of database. It have very different design philosophies, but here we're not talking about that type of database. Of course, you can use MySQL database to be the database provider for our website, but let's make it simple. Let's use the MySQL database. Okay, so in this video, I'm trying to go through the installation process of a MySQL database on a Ubuntu system, and also cover the basic syntax about about MySQL syntax. And in the next video, we're going to write a server-side JavaScript host code to connect to the database, and also provide APIs to the to or front end to or browser-based JavaScript code.